Hi everyone, no major news today, so let's get straight into the data. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. It really helps out the channel. And let's get started. Looking at fear and greed index. So obviously it was up today. Markets were up today. Yesterday's close was 69. We're up to 78 today. So obviously markets went a lot higher. They did break out as well. Everything looked very strong. Stock price strength continuing to be extreme greed. Breadth continuing to hover in regular greed. And everything else has stayed the same generally. We did see volatility step down a little bit. So it looks like we're not getting the breakout, at least on this push. Again, it doesn't mean that NVDA can hold up markets forever, and the rest of the markets will have an impact. The question is when. And then looking at bonds, these continue to be in extreme greed. Just no fear really in markets right now. Moving over to seasonality, you can see we are supposed to be in a downtrend in terms of seasonality into the end of the month. We're supposed to see pretty consistent moves lower. Obviously, NVIDIA drove everything higher and AI is pushing markets higher, so that's a bit of an outlier when it comes to seasonality. But just keep this in the back of your mind. End of February into March continues to be a weakness period in seasonality. And in the Sunday video, we'll take a look at the March data if it's out. Moving over to Fed futures, you can see we are still looking at a cut here in June. I just wanted to mention this. We did see the Fed minutes come out and there was still a lot of hesitation about cuts, which makes sense. We did get a pause at the last meeting, but I still think June is the absolute earliest, and I think July is probably more likely. You can see the highest probability for June is a cut, and then when you look at July, you can see it's basically split between a second cut and a pause for July. So I feel like this is still a little bit aggressive, and I think we're likely to see one cut, and I think July is probably the soonest we'll see that at this point. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see we got CPI numbers here for the Eurozone coming in at minus 0.4, which was in line with expectations for the month-over-month data, so that is very big move down. Year-over-year, similar, 2.8 for the headline number, 3.3 for the core number, so they're doing a little bit better than us on inflation. Definitely interesting to see that. And then looking at global U.S. manufacturing PMI, better than that expectation, better than the 50 line. All of these were well above the 50 line. It's worth noticing that global services PMI did miss a little bit, but still above the 50 line. And then the big highlight for today actually was the Fed balance sheet, which sold off about $50 billion. Pretty significant move for them. They had been basically flat, if not up a little bit over the past few weeks, and then we saw a significant move down. It'll be interesting to see if that populates on the M2 supply or if that starts to affect markets a little bit. But the Fed starting to reduce their balance sheet once again, and then looking at tomorrow, basically nothing on the calendar. Moving over to Max Pain, you can see stock price up at 507, had a massive run on the day. Max Pain still down at 496. We were pretty set up for a close right at that level until we got the massive NVIDIA news, so we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. I was watching 502 as the call wall. We're well above that now by about 1%, so keep that in mind. Could be looking at a 1% down move in tomorrow's session just to satisfy that biggest call wall. We'll see how it plays out. Top of the puts up around 504 and 505 right in that zone. So again, that's about a 0.5% of downside potential. Keep that in mind. Total options, 1.3 million, not crazy amount, but really just watching that 502 level here on Max Pain. Moving over to the chart, starting off with the S&Ps, you can see yesterday we hit that trend line. Couple of wicks to that level, then we rallied into the NVIDIA earnings, which drove markets much higher after hours yesterday and then pre-market this morning. And then everything kind of rallied on the back of that move. Didn't quite make it to the upper trend line around 510 or so. And we are down a little bit after hours, pretty interesting. You do have to look at it for what it is, though. This is a massive gap higher and breakout, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. This is a big flip from yesterday. Obviously, we looked pretty weak on the 2 days preceding that NVIDIA move. We're right at the trend line, potentially looking to see if we did get a break. And now you can see we are right at that upper trend line. 510, like I said, is your current resistance. This is an all-time high for the S&P, so another all-time high close and wick high. Everything looks super bullish. The high on the day was 508.49. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very different thesis here. And the NASDAQ did rally super aggressive, but it was looking super weak relative to the S&Ps. We had 3 bearish days in a row, broke the 21, broke the trend line, found some support at 2190. I was really watching this as more of a head and shoulders, so looking for a move down to that 416.50 area. Right at these lows from the end of January. But now we've got a push back up. We're at those same wick highs that we saw on Monday this week. Hit that 438 level. and then we rejected from there. We're back below the trend line after hours, and we're falling about 50 cents or so after hours, so that's quite bearish. If this tops out and starts to sell off tomorrow, that could be quite weak, so keep that in mind as we go into tomorrow's session. We did hit resistance, we did start to sell off after hours. If we get back above 438, that would again trigger my more bullish positions. But right now we are at resistance, looking at a potential double top. And if this starts to sell, like I said, 433.24 is the level I'm looking for. And you can see that level here on the longer time frame, right at resistance, right at that double top, 438. Momentum is bullish, but RSI right at the SMA. This is where it would reject if it's going to do it. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell was positive on the day, 0.78%, but not super aggressive. Got back above 198.75. Nothing like the SPY, obviously. Got back up to the 9 EMA. Momentum still bearish. RSI still hovering. So definitely consolidation, nothing doing here on the Russell. And then looking at the Dow, massive breakout. Gapped higher, rallied, got back above 387.77, gapped through that level, and then rallied 1.16%. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish here on the Dow. So everything looks strong. And we also got news that Amazon is being added to the Dow, which I think is going to be bullish for the Dow in the longer term. Typically, it's not super bullish after it's actually added. It's usually a buy the rumor, sell the news, but we'll see how it plays out. The Dow continues to be quite strong. Moving over to the equal weighted S&Ps, I wanted to highlight that we did get a gap higher and rally. We did officially break this level here at 160.31, next level 164.87. That is your all-time high here going back to January of 22. So equal weighted S&Ps finding some strength on the day, despite the fact that NVIDIA is not the same weighting, obviously, in the equal weighted S&Ps. So it's good to see we're getting a little bit more market participate on the equal weights as everything else goes higher. Moving over to MAG7, I wanted to highlight the fact that even with that massive move on NVIDIA, we're basically right back at the trend line. So hit the 21 EMA, found some support there, gapped higher and rallied. Hit the trend line. Now we'll see what happens here. This is an important level. If it breaks out, there's nothing to the upside, obviously. This is all-time highs here for the MAG7. So that would be pure price discovery, but we're at resistance. If we find a little bit of rejection from that level, or at least grinding price action, that could be interesting. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, both of these bullish on the day. Like I said, AI driving everything higher, it seems like. And you can see on Apple, gapped higher, got above that trend line, got above the 144 and 200 SMAs, and then rallied up to the 9, and then held that level right into the close. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. You would expect this to swing up to 186.81 and potentially that 21 EMA at 187.25 at this point. So looks quite bullish. And then looking at Tesla, again, rallied right to that resistance. That's 3 days in a row we've tested it. Seems like we're going to break out tomorrow. Momentum stepping towards bullish, RSI stepping towards bullish. If 197.75 breaks, then you're looking for 214. So quite a lot of risk reward potential here, trading off of that 197.75 level. Again, you need to see it break, hold, and then rally to that next level. Moving over to Microsoft and NVIDIA, both of these obviously went higher today. Microsoft rallying as an AI play on the back of NVIDIA. You can see Microsoft 2.35%, gapped right to the trend line and then rallied a little bit from that level. So back above all the EMAs and SMAs, momentum ticking towards bullish here on Microsoft. And then looking at NVIDIA, obviously massive run, 16.4% on the back of their earnings right to the trend line. So that's interesting. I had this kind of center line on the trend. We'd been chopping above and below that level for a while. Then we had that clear breakdown from it to the 21 EMA going into earnings, held the 21 EMA, and then we obviously had the massive gap and rally. And now we are right back to that trend line again. And you can see we're up a little bit after hours. So the trend is currently sitting at 794.05 and we're at 790.40. So right there, just a couple of dollars off on this almost $800 stock. And then looking at momentum and RSI, momentum, obviously massive step towards bullish. RSI back into overbought conditions, massive volume on the day. If this breaks, my next level is up around 850. And at this point, it does seem like it's going to go there. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, both of these went higher on the day. Pretty interesting. Seems like NVIDIA was almost a catalyst for everything. You would expect it in the AI plays and tech, but to see it on staples and discretionaries is pretty interesting. Staples almost to that trend line, up at 74.68, just a couple of pennies off of it. Bullish momentum, still looking at this to hit that 75.40 level. And then discretionaries continuing to rally. It rallied yesterday, gapped higher and rallied right to that 180.10 level and then rallied from there back right to these highs here from mid-December. And then next level 185.36 and then 189.38. momentum bullish, RSI bullish. It seems like this is breaking out to higher levels. Moving over to financials and healthcare. I haven't talked about these in a long time, but it is worth mentioning here. Financials gapped higher and broke out. So we're back above 39.70 and now we're rallying to 40.77. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. So you got financials headed higher, despite the fact that yields continue to look quite strong. And then looking at healthcare, this is all-time highs here for healthcare. Continues this pretty solid trend. Price discovery, all-time high close, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. So really I'm highlighting the fact that things outside of tech and AI are also rallying, and the structures here were threatening to break down and they just didn't do it. So it's probably part of the reason we're seeing the equal weighted S&Ps continue to rally and break out, even though the rest of the MAG7 had kind of been hovering for a while. Really the only strong one that continued to break out was NVDA. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth, we did get big steps up on both of these. 20-day breadth broke out. Probably have a couple of days until this hits that 86.50 area where we start to see some resistance. Then we'll see what happens there. You can hang out in that region for a while before you see breakdowns. That typically is the top of markets. And then looking at the 50-day breadth, we did get a continuation. Couldn't get above the 21 EMA. It's hanging above that 60.25 level. If it's going to reject, this would be that time where it would do it. But momentum is bullish, RSI pushing towards that 50 line above the SMA. Looks okay, not super convincing yet, but this 20-day breadth, like I said, does look quite bullish. Moving over to the 2-year and the 10-year yield, both of these looked bullish on the day. 2-year massive move. New high close here in the short term up to that 200 SMA, sitting at 4.74. Still looking at 4.8 for a price target. If it does get above this 4.75 area, that's going to be back above all the EMAs and SMAs. It's going to be quite bullish for yields. 10-year continuing to chop higher. It was bullish on the day, but not by a lot. Next candle already bullish, looking for 435, 4.35. I would expect that level to break. It did get tested today, so we touched it once. Would expect it to push through to the trend line up around 4.38, 4.39 in that area. It's really interesting to see basically everything rallying super aggressively, even with yields going higher. I just want to highlight the fact, looking at the 10-year, the last time we saw yields in this area is going back here to the end of November, which obviously was a super bullish period, but yields were trending down pretty consistently. And then we kind of bottomed out at the end of December. Yields have been trending higher and equities have been trending higher. It's pretty unusual for that to happen. Last time we saw yields trending higher pretty consistently, it was September into October, which was your low here, and that's when the 10-year hit that 5 mark. If this continues to break out, it just seems impossible that equities can continue to chug higher every single day the way that they have been. Eventually, yields are going to start to weigh on equities. It just hasn't done it yet. Moving over to the dollar, nothing super convincing here. It did throw a big wick to the downside, broke both of these trend lines. Let's go ahead and extend that out. You can see it was right in that range, broke both of those, took out all the stops, I'm sure, if you were using my levels, and then rallied right back up into the middle of that range. So you would have got stopped out, you would have got a re-entry target, and then pushed back up into those levels. So keep that in mind. The dollar still was bearish on the day, 0.05, momentum bearish, RSI still bearish here, but it did find a massive wick rejection. Just look how big that wick was, right back into the middle of that range after touching the 200 SMA. At this point, I would be looking at the 55 EMA at 103.1 as a potential area for support. It might move into that area, get a quick touch, and then you would see a rally through. You can see once we got above it, tested it here, held, rally. Looks like we're probably going to test it again here and then rally. So keep that in mind. The dollar moving lower is still bullish for equities, but I just don't think it's going to do it forever, especially with yields going higher. Moving over to JNK and TLT, we did see a jump here in JNK, gapped higher and rallied, got back above all the EMAs and SMAs, nothing really changing, still in the middle of this consolidation. Might find some resistance at 94.82, next level of resistance, 95.37, right at the trend line as well in that same range. Momentum ticking towards bullish, RSI ticking towards bullish. I would expect it to get to that upper range and then we'll see what happens there. And then looking at TLT, it did rally a little bit, surprisingly, despite the fact that yields were going up today. Obviously, this is the 20-year yield, so it's not directly affected by the 2 or the 10-year, but typically it trades inverse to the 10-year, and it was up on the day despite the fact that the 10-year was also up on the day, so pretty interesting there. Momentum Did tick towards bullish, nothing convincing. Volume did step up on the day, which is interesting as well. Still below the level 92.82. You want to see it get above that and hold and look for the rally. As long as you're below it, still bearish. It is still below all the EMAs and SMAs also, which is bearish. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I made plenty of adjustments on the day. IWM left that one the same, no issues there. Still looking at a max profit of 202.30, and we're still pretty decently below that level. It was bullish on the day. We'll see if we make any adjustments there. Probably going to hold this for the next week or two, and then we'll see what happens. Right now, still looking okay. And then looking at the Qs, plenty of adjustments on the day. I did roll up and in my puts, so I made some money there on these shorter term puts, and then I rolled them out to Friday. I think my plan right now is just to trade these short term options and see if I can collect credit at a faster pace. With the moves that we've been seeing, it's been quite a whipsaw, so I don't really want to do the same kind of trading that I was doing previously. So right now, trading the shorter term options on the daily, and so far that's working out okay. I did roll my calls from today to tomorrow at 436. Obviously, I paid a lot of money to do that, rolled them up quite a lot, but still sitting at a credit of $2.64 for tomorrow, which puts my max profit there at 438.67. Currently sitting at 438.07 for the close, and it's actually down about 60 cents after hours. So looking to profit about $2 on that position. We'll see how it plays out tomorrow. If this breaks out above that 438 level, like I said on the charts, then I'll roll these out again and continue to do so on a daily basis. I think the goal here is just to collect as much credit as possible on the shorter time frames, like I said. So we'll see how that plays out over the next week or two. And then I did sell some 43 calls and puts. This is a strangle and it is long dated. We'll see how that plays out as well. It is also a little bit scaled towards the bullish side. You can see I got $4.72 credit on 2 puts, and then $2.77 credit at 460 for 43 days from now. So skewed towards the bull side, but just trying to collect a little bit of credit. And those are both in profit, at least here in the short term. So right now, covered calls on a daily basis, puts on a daily basis. And we'll see how that plays out over the next week. And then looking at the TQQs, I did sell a put here and then roll out a week, 255 for $4.39. That puts the max profit here at 59.39, and you can see we're already above that. Let's take a look at it. It is down a little bit after hours, but still above my max profit. Like I said, I'm still a little bit hesitant going into next week, potential bearishness with seasonality, but overall everything is positioned bullish. You can see positive deltas across the board with just a couple of negatives here with the calls, but mostly positive deltas. And then looking at my profit and loss graph, you can see my max profit is $4,400. That's obviously out to 43 days from now because I have those really long dated puts and calls. I think I'm going to keep those on over the medium term to see if I can collect some theta in the background while I'm trading my shorter dated options. We'll see how that plays out going forward. But right now you can see $4,400 over the next 43 days, but obviously the majority of that is coming in tomorrow with those puts and calls that I have. In terms of break evens, super high here to the upside. 482. Obviously, I don't expect it to go anywhere near that high. And then to the put side, 425 is my break even. So I'm pretty heavily skewed to the bull side, at least in the short term. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the aftermath of the NVIDIA move. Will we see continuation tomorrow, or has it played out? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.